Okay, and we're back. Let's carry on. Let's carry on with this analysis of Porsalin's Sargon documentary.
From Intel into Sarkeesian's feminist frequency website in efforts to increase diversity and inclusivity in the tech sphere, this obsession with the Adam Friedland facsimile led to accusations of harassment at the feet of a hapless Cole Benjamin.
Let's call this what it is. You and the other feminazis in the gamer world are coming for our balls to snip them off, put them into a little felt purse, and take them away, so we have to play your non-violent game.
I remember how enraged they all were, all of these Gamergaters, when Anita went on Stephen Colbert. I remember how enraged they were that she was sort of getting legitimacy, sort of by being the better person, I suppose. Certainly she's behaved with more class and dignity than Sargon ever did, or ever will. And dignity and class shines through. It always does. And as I say, I hope Anita's somewhere right now, just enjoying herself, just having a good time, and realizing that Gamergate and the harassment campaign that was targeted at her, it was a molehill. It was a molehill. It was something that you can move past and be a better Armenian in the future.
That's right.
No, that's not true.
It's a culture war. It's a subculture war.
There is something going on, and what it is women being harassed and threatened and terrorized.
After you first attacked male gamers for enjoying looking at big-breasted women with tiny armor that barely covers their nipples. What is wrong with that? I like what that looks like.
Like, game ethics and journalism is not what's happening in any way. It's actually men going after women in really hostile, aggressive ways. That's what Gamergate is about. It's about, like...
I like that Porsalin decided to include the Anita harassment here, because it really is intrinsic to who Sargon is. It really is intrinsic to understand that Anita was right. She was a saint. She was our spiritual queen. And Sargon was the troll under the bridge, a golden gnome that was shitting on Anita's lawn. And it really is intrinsic to understand this battle between good and evil, between purity and impurity, that Sargon and Anita embodied.
Like terrorizing women for being involved in this industry, for being involved in this hobby.
You have benefited from threats made at you. Just so we're clear, I mean, you have directly financially benefited from it. You've benefited in many other ways that aren't financial as well. You get to give talks to thousands of people. You get to appear on the Colbert Report. You are certainly no use to the video game industry.
The envy and jealousy in his voice when he says that, when he describes Anita's success, the envy and vitriolic jealousy that he holds for this successful Armenian lady.
And you're no use to the video game industry because you are a charlatan. You're an imposter. You are here under false pretenses. You do not care about games. You do not care about gaming. Your threats sound made up, and they sound like they were made up by feminists. They sound like they were made up by feminists who are pushing an agenda that you are profiting from.
Such was Sargon's manic fixation towards Anita Sarkeesian that he spent over 3 hours fawning over Davis Arini, a self-titled white nationalist, race realist, and what appears to be a deeply closeted magician.
Now these offhand remarks that entail, 30 seconds of the video, they've landed Porsalin in a bit of hot water with Davis Arini. Now I thought, I was under the impression that David Sorini had committed suicide. I thought he then heroed when the Sarkeesian Effect, the documentary that he crowdfunded and didn't pull off what was his name? Jordan Owen, was it? The other sort of neckbeard that was following Anita around and trying to make money from her harassment. I thought he'd killed himself. I thought he'd wept himself into suicide. So it was really shocking to see that there he is writing 3,000-word screeds at Porsalin over Twitter, because Porsalin's called him a closet magician. I don't know. I think the back and forth since there's been a video put out by Porsalin, it's about 10 minutes, which goes into Arini and the backlash around the Sargon documentary. He doesn't seem to even address the actual subject of the documentary at hand, Sargon. It's I mean, Davis Arini has purely got issue with with himself being called a closeted magician. I suppose at least you're still alive, Davis. I mean, I thought you'd long since passed into I don't know, some cemetery, or maybe you were going to be cremated. Who knows? I imagine that your family would find your lifeless corpse and just sort of shrug and go, "Oh God, this is another expense that he's incurred upon us." Who knows? But yeah, I mean, blast from the past. This whole thing is a nostalgia tour, a trip. Porsalin's taking us back to the past.
Why blacks fail. You should be absolutely furious with the niggers. Not the blacks, the fucking niggers. On paper, I have nothing against white nationalism.
Arini was at the time raising funds for an Anita Sarkeesian documentary.
And this was another... So, I mean, we're going into this whole thing about the Gamergate sphere being all charlatans and liars. The only one I don't think was actually a liar was Thunderfoot. And he was... I don't know, he was a scientist that taught at an American university. I think that's pretty much confirmed. But Sargon was a liar. I mean, he was not a video games developer. Mundane Matt was a liar. He was not a Hollywood insider, as he used to present himself as. And Davis Arini was a liar. He used to present himself as a movie director, as a documentary maker, a filmmaker that was qualified and credentialed enough to be using... To be crowdfunding, using a crowdfunding website in order to make a documentary. I mean, in the end, it came out that he was a complete charlatan as well. He didn't know how to use Adobe Premiere, or he did, but he knew all the keyboard shortcuts. I remember that being a meme at the time. These people were, and in order to justify their embezzlement of all of these funds, they would live stream their own incompetent attempts at grappling with the instruction manual of the various things that they were using to try and create the things that they promised the people paying money for. So we had Sargon trying to grapple with that games development software and live streaming it without shame. And, you know, Arini would do the same thing. He'd live stream him editing or and learning the editor, sort of watching YouTube clips. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassment. It's fraud, simply. These people should have gone to prison. They should have had trials. They should have been investigated. Instead, I mean, this is likely the only investigation they're going to have, a documentary from Porsalin and an autistic analysis from Goddenson, you know, long after the events have happened.
Titled The Sarkeesian Effect. And as expected, Sargon was all in.
Hello everyone, I'm having a conversation with Davis Arini. You may know him from doing the Sarkeesian Effect documentary, which I will put a link to in the description after this, but you can probably also find by the link that's in the description to his channel, which you should check out.
Arini's rather transparent objective here was fairly simple. Use post-Gamergate traction to cast a crowdfunding net into an ocean of anti-Sarkeesian sentiment. And despite raising $50,000 according to IMDb, the film was riddled with the most basic of audiovisual issues.
In a Westboro Baptist Church kind of way.
Do a couple more tweets like that.
I mean, yeah, there's no level of sort of, you wouldn't even say artistry was needed to complete this Sarkeesian Effect documentary. Just the idea that lining three people up on a sofa with the camera askew, with poor lighting and very, very poor audio, does not make a documentary. It is not even worthy of the term documentary. They essentially compiled a few YouTube videos that they'd flatly recorded in one sitting, edited them together into an autistically long screed on Anita Sarkeesian, and decided that that justified the £50,000 given to them by well-meaning Kekastanis and liberalists. How more do you have to be shit upon? You know, the Sargonic crowd, how they're victims at this point. They're Stockholm syndrome survivors, but also like reoffenders, returners. They seem to love this. They seem to enjoy being shat upon from a very great height, and being abused. I mean, their credit cards are still always in their hands. They're always more than willing to enter their financial details into whatever crowdfunding campaign is offered by these Gamergate losers, charlatans, frauds. They seem to never learn from the lessons of the past. I mean, I hope that everyone watching this documentary can realize that they shouldn't be donating anything to charlatans on the internet. If you're donating to anyone's Patreon right now, if you don't even have an ad blocker, get one and just end any subscriptions you have to these people. I'm not just talking about Gamergaters, but anyone you watch online, because they're going to do it for free anyway if they actually enjoy it as a hobby. And there's no way you should be keeping them in neatdom, slave to a computer, making videos on subjects that you find slightly entertaining. Well, you shouldn't be paying them for that. They should get real jobs, and this should be a hobby, as it used to be back in the Kino year 2007.
Putting up a Patreon.
These are our readers. So bear in mind that they're the customer.
So I've had a long history of editing. I had over 1,000 articles edited.
Such was the lack of technical quality that any 2-bit low-rent faggot could have done the exact same shit for free. Speaking of which, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Along with director Jordan Owen, a Down syndrome embodiment of Dick Masterson, Maureen's filmmaking legacy seems to have now all but petered out.
Now, I'd just like to leave you with this one question. It's to those people who donated to the production of this. Owen and Maureen have taken...
Now, lots of people have got lots of things to say about Kevin Logan, but there's one thing you can't deny about the bloke. He was covering this stuff as it was happening. He's been around since they were at the peak of their power, since Gamergate was sort of known as a sacred cow that no one could touch. He was there, very hated, very universally unpopular. He was there attacking these guys and showing the truth. I mean, he's our Fox Mulder in all of this. He's the Fox Mulder of Birmingham. And he exposed the conspiracy. He exposed the black oil that Sargon was hushing up. He exposed the super soldiers that would come into the later seasons of Gamergate. And he exposed it all to be this giant shit show. He's I don't know, he's one of the foremost heroes of this whole affair. And it's great to see that he's finally getting a bit of traction. He's finally getting a bit of recognition. Not just as a Sargon hater, but as someone who will point out the bullshit of people just lying to their audiences. I mean, he is left-wing. He does come at it from an ideological perspective. But the undercurrent with Kev's content is, if you lie to if you're a charlatan, if you're a fraud, he's gonna point out your hypocrisy and shine a mirror back at you. The fact that Sargon is 90% of his channel is 90% criticizing Sargon speaks volumes as the sort of charlatan that Sargon is. That he's had all of these years worth of content just out of the things that Sargon has said.
Taken it and produced this thing, right? So how completely and utterly shafted do you feel right now?
Meanwhile, Sargon's first real foray into political campaigning saw him lead a petition against what he perceived to be the social justice indoctrination of university students.
There's an anti-feminist YouTube user by the name of Sargon of a Cat, and a few days ago he recently made a petition.
I mean, these were easy wins for Sargon. We've got this, I don't know, we've got this crater-faced, teenager basically. I mean, you could drive a 4-wheel drive down his face. You could fry bacon on his face, with a bit of heat. But these were easy wins for Sargon. When it was shit rat and this guy, making videos in front of a communist flag, in front of pictures of Stalin. I mean, Sargon did have easy wins, and via easy wins, he had the ability to attract an audience of people who thought that because he's having these easy wins, he's therefore the next Plato, therefore the next Aristotle, therefore the next leader of whatever we want to happen, whatever group we want to organize in the future. I mean, these easy wins led to Sargon becoming who he is now.
Addressed to universities, no, not a specific university, not even universities within a specific location, just universities generally, okay, good luck with that, calling on them to temporarily suspend what's called social justice.
So, look, clearly Sargon was being completely retarded here. But the people attacking Sargon at the time and pointing out this shit weren't really, I don't know, maybe they weren't appealing to the wider crowd. I mean, clearly Sargon's talking bollocks here, but the people attacking him were sort of even worse than Sargon at the time, if you can imagine, you know. So this is why Sargon rose to the top. He was sort of oil rising to the top of an oil spillage in an ocean, you know. And the rest of us were sort of dolphins and seals that were covered in oil, and wanting it all to stop, wanting Sargon's oil to just be washed away from our ocean, you know. But sadly, at the time, no one was quite equipped to go at Sargon. The cachet wasn't there for the Sargon hatred. People hadn't quite realized that they hated Sargon. It would take a few years for that to brew and manifest.
Discourses.
As pointed out by potato-faced male feminist Kevin Logan, Sargon's bizarre proposal was to essentially censor speech and bring forward more government involvement in policing ideas.
Arguably the weirdest and shittest petition ever set up. I'm both simultaneously annoyed and baffled by it. Sargon has always said before that he's against the government, you know, he's for like a small government, like a left-wing libertarian thing. And he's against authoritarianism, even though he wants to suspend certain courses of independence.
Sargon's whole political manifesto, his whole raison d'etre was to simply be Christopher Hitchens, to be the Christopher Hitchens of Gamergate, to be the Christopher Hitchens of YouTube. So that's why he's anti-authoritarian. That's why he's libertarian. That's why he's crusading for free speech and the right to offend people. It's simply because he's doing a Christopher Hitchens tribute act. He doesn't lack any of the eloquence of Christopher Hitchens, or any of, indeed, I don't know, the literary ability of Christopher Hitchens. I mean, you could say many things about him, and many people have, but you can't deny that Christopher Hitchens wasn't or was well read. You know, how many books has Sargon read? I think he's read 3 and listened to 2, do you know? So, and one of them was Locke, which is like 60 pages. So, I mean, he wasn't drawing from a literary cachet, but what Sargon was doing was he was watching those Hitch Slap compilation videos on YouTube, and he was going, I can mimic that like an autist. I can adopt those mannerisms, and I can come across as an intelligent human being who can own people in arguments online.
The learning institutes. I mean, it's baffling, the hypocrisy of being pro free speech and pro freedom, and then wanting to do something as absurd as this is ridiculous.
Sargon's response was to suggest correcting misinformation was not censorship, before seeking validation from his Transylvanian pet gerbil, V.
Specifically, libertarians seem to have an issue with this, which I found very perplexing. And I heard some very strange arguments from the libertarians.
This dumbbell in the corner, in the left-hand corner, I mean, has he stolen this from someone? Are we actually supposed to believe that he lifts this in his spare time? Are we actually supposed to believe that Sargon has a workout regimen, or indeed has contemplated it? Or is this just a lie? Is this just something that he can mislead his fan base into thinking that, you know, he's just big boned. He's not fat. He's big boned. I think that's what it is.
In favour of not banning social justice in universities, suspending it until it can be assessed and reformed to whatever degree, to just take out the misinformation and insert reality and fact into these courses, and not teach them in an ideological echo chamber, as if they are true to students who are there to be taught. Why are you teaching complete nonsense to people who are paying for not nonsense? I can't believe there is an argument against from anyone, frankly, on the subject of not teaching non-factual information. It's just
the problem that I have with it.
Look at V wearing glasses, pretending to look smart.
Because I put up your petition on my channel, so I'm also responsible for the backlash, which I don't see why it should be. But if they would teach factual, accurate things and they would come to the conclusions I don't like, I would have nothing against this. But when they teach like 1 out of 5 women are getting raped, that's not accurate. That's not factual. When you say white people were never slaves, that's not true.
And despite the
So, I mean, in this early Gamergate rhetoric, I mean, they were addressing issues, you know, against white people. You know, I mean, there was no pretense there that gamers as a whole were white and male. You know, yet when the alt-right came a sniffing, and when the bad optics came around, and they wanted to hold onto their YouTube channels, suddenly it all became. They had to distance themselves from it, and they had to define themselves against it. I mean, even V there is saying that, you know, it's a racial issue, but you know, they had to drop it. They had to drop it in order to save their YouTube careers, and that's gone extremely well, hasn't it, Sargon?
overwhelming consensus proving time and time again how fundamentally cack-handed Cole's big boy ideas were, there was no backing down for the political egghead.
So, Cammy. Can I call you Cammy? Cammy your bands. Man, I remember when you used to be cool. You know, before you became a crypto leftist, anarchist, fascist commie, or whatever label you've chosen to adopt this week. You will have to forgive me if I am not surprised that someone who buys into social justice, hook, line, and recently discarded chains is opposed to petitioning to stop social justice courses in universities. You'll have to forgive me.
Asking your YouTube subscribers to sign a vaguely worded petition to an unspecified institution that's going to be handed in nowhere. A grassroots movement, apparently. You fucking hemorrhoid.
You see, this acne-covered communist has a point. I mean, he has a point. This was a legitimate criticism against Carl Benjamin at the time. But at the time, I mean, this might as well have been a clown delivering this criticism. You know, no one's going to take this fellow seriously. And therefore, that's why, you know, it was an easy win for Sargon, and that's why he rose to prominence.
Oh, look, Sargon of Akkad and his subscribers have said that they don't like social justice courses. Better suspend that master's degree. Like, seriously, why would they answer to you or your subscribers? You're not a part of the local community, let alone a part of the student body. You know, to them, you're just some random prick on the internet with a following and a lack of self-awareness.
As Sargon's crusade against the identity-obsessed regressives continued, yet another mega-brained idea came hurtling towards the pot-bellied free thinker. In a series of conversations spanning several weeks, Sargon of Wakanda revealed that he was in fact 1/4 Kang.
So, I mean, we're talking about the evolution here from what Gamergate actually was, you know, when they were talking about these things. They were talking about feminist system. I mean, people could see through what they were talking about, and they could apply their own sort of foreknowledge and research to what they were alluding to. And then Sargon gets starting to be called alt-right. They start to get called far-right. They start to realize that being such a way is going to get you deplatformed, is going to harm your shekels. So this is where Sargon invents black ancestry. And if you've been keeping up with my content, we proved that Sargon's black grandfather was in fact a black-faced grandfather. Sargon admits that he had a grandfather that used to work down the mine, and he'd come in from a hard day's work covered in soot all over his face. And that gave Sargon legitimate claim to a black ancestry and black heritage. Incredible, absolutely outstanding. But Sargon invents this in order to gain kudos with Lacey Green and Kevin Logan, I suppose. But they, as do the rest of the world, realize that he's completely. I mean, this is so transparent in its attempt to mask who Sargon is, and it comes across as as just a barefaced lie, and wonderfully, people recognize it as such.
Well, you'd be surprised, actually. My dad isn't white.
Mm-hmm.
So my granddad wasn't white, and he was a black man in the 60s who married my white grandmother. My grandfather wasn't a quarter black. He was fully black.
It's just lies, isn't it? It's just full lies. But it gave him a cachet for which to carry on this authoritarian, anti-authoritarian even, Christopher Hitchens-esque crusade on the internet. Christopher Hitchens did something very similar, where he suddenly revealed when he started going full anti-Muslim on the lecture circuit, and then he had to reveal that he had Jewish ancestry, and therefore that made him exempt from criticism from people on the left. So Sargon tried to adopt that tactic by claiming black ancestry, and that went down a treat.
My grandfather's black on my dad's side.
Sargon's motive here seems fairly straightforward. This revelation had given Carl a license to play identity politics.
Yeah, so Porsalin's just put it in a far more succinct way than I just done, but that speaks to the creditiveness of narration here and the sharpness of the script.
With little to no consequence. And although this might have helped raise shield against the neo-Marxist left, those on the right were less than sympathetic. Rather predictably, shitposting 4chaners took this admission of black heritage and well and truly ran with it. For years, Sargon was a known 4chan meme thief, and was chiefly responsible for the death of all things Kekistani. This reverse Midas touch also saw Sargon's adoption of the Pepe meme almost cringe the frog to death. So to see Sargon now targeted by those he had so desperately tried to...
Well, let's not forget that before the Kekistani stuff, before he murdered that, he'd murdered the red pill stuff. He used to commission artworks where he was asking people to get into a car with him, Mundane Matt, and Mr. Metica. And they were going to red pill everyone. He used to commission artworks with him and Nigel Farage standing side by side holding red pills and offering them up to people viewing the poster. Absolute cringe, I suppose. But before Kekistan, it was this red pill murdering. And then since then, we've seen liberalist murdering. We're seeing now a UKIP murdering. You could almost say that he single-handedly killed the alt-right, as it were. I mean, Paul Joseph Watson, he's struggling for his channel now. And I'm sure that he regrets any sort of alliance with Carl, as he wakes up every single day and wonders whether he's got a YouTube channel.
Caught over the years was by all means rather poetic. Sargon's impulsive response was to flood his own Twitter timeline with interracial pornography.
We're forgetting just before he started tweeting pornography at members of the alt-right, he was lying on the sofa where his wife and his wife's child sat and watched Emmerdale. He was lying bollock naked from the waist down on his sofa and tweeting pictures of his bare ass to own the alt-right, and sending them to... I mean, some of these people weren't even alt-right. He was just sending pictures of himself lying nude, bollock naked, on the sofa where his wife and his wife's child watch Emmerdale. And he was sending those pictures out just into the ether, just at people. And then he decided to ramp it up a notch and start tweeting interracial gay porn at people. This is a candidate who's running for actual, proper, serious office, not just of a little town in England, not just of a little village in England, but the entire southwest of England.
In a sad attempt to troll the alt-right, endless JPEGs of X-rated black-on-white gore transformed what was once a platform to share political and ideological ideas into a retarded circus of thoughtless stupidity.
So, Sargon, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing? I mean, I was just going to lunch today at work, flipped open my iPhone to see what's on the Twitter feed, see what ideas are out there, and porn. Porn all across a channel that I thought was an ideas feed.
As always,
This was it as well. So, Sargon always presented himself as this ideas man, as this thinker, this foremost thinker of our times, as this Plato, as Aristotle, reincarnated in the year 2016. Yet, when he was called out on his outrageous shenanigans and his behaviors, like, tweeting pictures of his bare ass when he's lying on the sofa, bollock naked, where his wife and his wife's child sit and watch Emmerdale of an evening, when he's doing that, and then he's tweeting gay pornography at people, and he's saying he won't even rape MPs, victims of sexual assault. He would hide. He would then switch. The duality would kick in, and he would switch into I'm not just a thinker. I'm not just Aristotle, but I'm the shitlord extraordinaire. You ain't never seen a meme slinger like me, was Sargon's defense. And to see him actually using that defense to the media, to the mainstream press, I've seen him use this defense to Sky News, to the Sunday Politics, to people interviewing him in the street, in reality, in real life. It's baffling. I can't believe this is happening. This is Clown World. I know he's killing that meme, just as he killed the NPC meme, but this is Clown World.
Human Shield was once again called upon for another round of Sargonian apologetics.
While we were talking about this, someone from the alt-right comes in and calls Sargon a nigger. The reason he calls Sargon a nigger is because he has ancestry of black descent.
V will swallow anything. V will swallow any of Sargon's lies, and I'm sure other things as well. But V will always toe Sargon's party line. V has definitely earned his place at Sargon's side. And whatever Sargon's paying him, it's never enough. It's never enough. This man has more loyalty than anyone. When we were giving out our golden guns, PPP and I decided to name an award especially in honor of V, and it was the V Award for loyalty. I think Gator won it for his allegiance to Ralph, but V is a loyal creature, a loyal monster that dwells in some Transylvanian basement somewhere. But just know, if you were V Sargon, he would die for you. He'd throw himself into the flames of hell in order to keep your hide, just ever so slightly warm.
Grandfather actually is a black person. Now, how do you offend people that are white supremacists and they believe in the purity of the white race, and they are very upset if you have like a black person in your family tree? Like, you send them interracial gay porn, of course, right? You send them a little bit of the black.
V justifying this, if Sargon had decided to live stream himself eating feces, Nick Bates style, and tagged it with the words, or even as he's consuming feces, sort of in the garbled, browned teeth, muffling the words, kiss my ass right. V would still be making this video defending Sargon's actions. He'd see no problem with it. He wouldn't disavow. He'd be right there, front and center, running the Sargon Defense Force.
Backdicking, and they had a meltdown.
Sargon's Twitter account was later suspended for what Pathos.com claims, tweeting an image of a black man sucking off a white penis to a Twitter account entitled @young_domon. And although pornography itself is fair game under Twitter's terms of service, targeting pornography for the attention of unsuspecting users is most certainly not. Still, Sargon of Bullshit would have his fans believe he was simply yet another victim of Jack Dorsey's political wrath.
Hello, folks. As you can see, I've been suspended from Twitter.
This is Sargon's evolution into Anita, into the Anita boogeyman that he constructed, he artificially created with Mundane Matt and Thunderfoot. He's now become Anita. He's now become that bogeyman, and he embraced it. It took a matter of, I think, 18 months for him to fully become Anita Sarkeesian, and here we are in full flow. He sees nothing wrong with his actions. He was simply an advocate for free speech. He was simply trying to shock the establishment, and make a political statement. This whole thing was a social experiment, and it wasn't just Sargon being a degenerate. Let's just continue.
And I don't know why, because I didn't do anything. And so I don't really know what's going on. I mean, my pinned tweet is "Don't send a threat," so I'm guessing it's not because I sent a threat.
But the disingenuousness here, he's pretending. He knows why he's been banned. He can't just send pornography at people. And don't forget that a lot of Sargon's followers were 16, 17. You know, he has a young, or he used to have a younger sub base. You know, the fact that he was explicitly sharing this stuff, and then he's pretending not to have any idea of why he was banned. I mean, this man's a charlatan, a fraud.
Obviously, I don't send threats because that's ridiculous, or any kind of like harassment. It's not on. So I believe people are using the hashtag #FreeSargon.
I think people should use the hashtag CBFK.
So if you could do me a favor and take to Twitter and use the hashtag to voice your opinion on the subject, I would greatly appreciate it.
Clearly, Cole Benjamin was willfully lying in efforts to align himself to the growing number of suspended political e-celebs.
Yeah, and this is on point here. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if Porsalin's written the entire script himself or if he's been helped, but whoever the team was that was helping Porsalin, props to you all. I mean, this is a very good effort. The narration here is perfect. That you're not even giving him any leeway, and it's triggering a lot of his supporters in the comment section of this documentary. But know that you're on the side of God. You're on the side of PPP, his Messiah, and just go forward in all your beliefs and carry on with this amazing documentary.
And to further compound matters for the chubby Swindonian, an even bigger lie was about to be exposed. With a self-admitted black grandfather, Carl's parents should surely exhibit some signs of African heritage. However, following a series of home videos uploaded to Sargon's channel, it was crystal clear both his parents were incredibly light-skinned.
I mean, does that man to you look like he had a not just a quarter black, but a fully black father? I mean, it's a stretch of the imagination, Carl.
So, how did you find it?
I'll tell you what, with a bit of practice, that could be good fun, couldn't it?
Could it?
When pushed on this, Sargon backpedaled, claiming to not know exactly what race his grandfather was, before admitting to what he called a slip-up. But Carl had reiterated the same assertion time and time again, only to have now been comically exposed due to his own stupidity. It was generally felt that Sargon's penchant for convenient duplicity in framing the narrative in his favour reduced him to the same leftist tactics he'd made a career from criticising.
I don't know what race he actually was because it was never something I really cared about.
And this is another thing that people were starting to notice. That whenever Sargon's called out on his bullshit and he's basically proven wrong and a liar or a fraud, he will simply say, I don't care. I don't care. The whole issue is something I don't care about. Well, you cared enough to wheel it out at a moment of your convenience, where you thought that claiming black ancestry would give you an easy win against some feminist you were debating at that time. And then people called you out on it, and then you say, oh, I don't care, it's not... I mean, this is just disingenuousness. We all know that if Sargon weren't found out to be a liar on this issue, that he would very definitely be claiming that he was black in all of these events across the southwest of England that he's hosting in order to gain candidacy for UKIP, European Member of Parliament for the southwest of England. We all know that he'd be claiming black ancestry when people were coming at him with racist placards and calling him a scumbag. You know, it's simply because he's been called out and found out, I mean, factually proven to be a liar. I mean, we can see from the footage itself, the video footage, that his father did not have a father who was fully black. Had that footage not been released, I'm 100% certain that Sargon would be claiming to be black. He'd be claiming to be this quadroon, and feel no shame, more importantly, in making such a baseless claim.
Like, I mean, he was a very dark-skinned man, but I don't think he was sub-Saharan because he had straight hair. But he's like, I mean, if you see my dad, he's actually got remarkably pale skin at the moment because he doesn't really go out in the sun much. But when he was younger, he used to go out in the sun quite a lot. He was really dark.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe someone's going to have to explain this to me. But I mean, if you're a black person and you don't go into the sun for a while, that doesn't mean you go white, does it? Who knows what Sargon was smoking when he made that defense or that justification? But heavens.
Sargon's reckless decision to maintain a conflict with alt-right Anons saw his Twitter account hacked after failing to double lock it. This resulted in such posts as, "The cocks are always lying about the hollow hoax, thanks for reminding me. Race war of a card. before stating that the Hollow hoax never happened, just another lie by the cocks. I wish there were 6 million more. In a fight he clearly had no chance of winning, Sargon of Akkad simply could not help but plant his stubby hobbit foot square into his mouth.
So my Twitter account has been hacked and I can't get it back. Now, this is actually, I guess, technically my fault, because I hadn't double-locked the account with my phone number like I've done with, every other important account. I don't know how these people have hacked my account, and I wouldn't even dare to speculate. But this is the fact, and so I can't use my Twitter account, and anything that comes out of it is obviously not me.
Meanwhile, Sargon's insatiable desire to remain close to his Armenian waifu saw him attend a panel titled Women Online at VidCon 2017.
Now, for many people new to the Sargon stuff, this is their sort of origin myth. This is the I don't know, maybe this is their ground zero for which they can build Sargon's lolcowdom. And look, it has a lot of substance here. This is the event where he met up with Mundane Matt. He met up with Andy Warski. He met a lot of the players that would be instrumental in the IBS shit show and in fact his own downfall in the year ahead. And it all started at the time with Sargon claiming victimhood yet again, when he was called, quite rightfully, a garbage human by Anita Sarkeesian, our queen, our Saint Anita. She rightfully pointed him out. She, in fact, prophesized his downfall, like the soothsayer she is. And, I mean, shortly after this, Sargon went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan called him out for the bullshit that he was spewing. Just a sign of what was coming. This was a shape of things to come. But, I mean, VidCon 2016, the germs of Kilroy were birthed there. The shenanigans of 2017 and then 2018 all birthed from this VidCon. So, I mean, this is a monumental event in terms of not just Sargon's lolcow career, but in terms of Warski, in terms of failure, in terms of Mundane Matt. All of them were here. And at the time, Sargon was king of them all. He was king of the skeptics. He was their little gnome king.
Justifiably infuriated at being unable to escape Sargon's infatuated reach, Anita lashed out, calling him a shithead and a garbage human.
If you Google my name on YouTube, you get shitheads like this dude who are making these dumbass videos that just say the same shit. Like, I can't tell you garbage human. Whatever, dude.
As expected, Sargon would milk the living shit out of what he called harassment and abuse, assumingly attempting.
I thought that was failure just walking by. Maybe it's not, but it has the sort of gait of failure.
To turn the tables on Anita's onslaught of Gamergate victimhood.
Apparently, they essentially said, it was Naomi who spoke to them, and she said that they had said that, they're worried about something going on, and then she just said to the head of security, well, she's a public figure.
What Sargon never got about claiming victimhood is if you're a very attractive Armenian lady, you're going to get a lot more sympathy from the average regular Joe than if you're a fat chav neckbeard. That's just simple optics, But Sargon never got this. Maybe it's because Sargon thinks that he's an Adonis. He thinks he's chiseled from marble. He thinks he's Casanova. Who knows? But he doesn't quite understand that him claiming victimhood means that A, no one's going to give a shit, and B, it just seems unlikely.
Attacking the audience, and she should be able to endure that, she should be able to take it. And they were like, that's a good point. And that's why they didn't check us out, they didn't do anything to us, and Anita is now the one abusing the audience.
Carl's Twitter feed was literally teeming with piteous complaints in an embarrassingly obvious attempt at reclaiming the moral high ground. Deep down, Sargon was likely aware that his valid criticism of Anita had reached levels tantamount to harassment, and this so-called attack helped shift whatever suggestions of emotional instability towards her.
I attended VidCon 2017 in Los Angeles, and I went to meet a group of fellow YouTubers who deal with similar subjects. At VidCon, there were several panels that featured Anita Sarkeesian, so we thought we would attend to actually hear what she had to say.
Bullshit and lies. You went because you wanted to agitate her, you wanted to make her known of your presence, because you had... I can only imagine that because he'd made about 100 videos, right, prior to this, and so had his cronies, so had Mundane Matt. I think Warski had even made a few, just attacking Anita, just going at Anita. But Anita had the grace and dignity to not respond, not even give you oxygen, to just pretend you weren't even there. And that must have bugged them so much that they decided to fly out from wherever they were and then try and sit in the front row of where she was speaking and make their presence known. Sargon wasn't there to listen to her ideas. He spent the past 3-4 years attacking her ideas. Really, really making money from her ideas. More money than she ever made from her ideas. More money than whatever crowdfunding she'd garnered from Feminist Frequency. But here he was trying to claim victimhood, trying to present a narrative, just as he did when he was banned from Twitter, that was entirely disingenuous, that was a lie. Yet his Kekistani liberalist horde will lap it up. They'll just take it. They'll take it, and then he'll have V do a defense video. Run that defense force. Sargon's just live streamed himself eating shit, literal feces, and this is a good thing because it owns the libs. And this is the cycle. This is Sargon's cycle. How often could he keep doing this? Well, eventually it came to an end. But it's interesting seeing him almost at the peak of where he used to be, and seeing his behavior and just sort of looking at it and laying it all out and going, this is disgraceful. This is not a way a human being should behave. And this is just more than anything, it's shameless. The front of Sargon, the front of this man. Let's carry on.
And if there was a question and answer session, perhaps we could actually pose some of the criticism to her that she has for years refused to address. This, of course, did not happen. Instead, Anita spotted us, in particular me, singled me out, and then subjected me to a torrent of abuse.
It was around this time that Sargon's official Twitter account was finally suspended for good. Strangely, no explicit reason was at the time given for the suspension, with Twitter citing some sort of unspecified targeted abuse as their justification. A furious Sargon demanded further explanation in a video titled, "Where is the victim Jack?"
Twitter have permanently suspended me because I was attacking the alt-right. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's not. You weren't attacking the alt-right, Sargon. You were tweeting gay porn, hardcore gay pornography, into the ether that your Twitter followers, some of whom, the majority of whom were underage, they were simply there because you were the funny frog man. They saw that. Nay, and just cast aside that for just a second. You were also posting pictures of yourself, bollock naked from the waist down, lying on the sofa, of which your wife and your wife's child watch Emmerdale of an evening, and you were deciding to tweet pictures of your bare ass on a sofa where your wife and wife's child watch a soap opera with the caption, "Eat shit alt-right," "Kiss my ass alt-right." These weren't just innocuous arguments being sent in pithy tweets at members of the alt-right. This was, you were not only distributing hardcore gay pornography, you were creating it and distributing hardcore gay pornography on your own sofa, in your own living room. Appalling.
There isn't a victim. There is no one that I have actually targeted and harassed. I mean, is there anyone playing the victim on Twitter? Are they showing this screen cap from one of my tweets saying, look, this is what Sargon said to me, blah, blah, blah? Because I haven't seen anything like that. And I've been looking, obviously.
For the following year, Carl would cling on to his well-earned persecution at the oppressive hands of Jack Dorsey. However, new light has been shed on exactly why his account was suspended. Vijaya Gad, the legal policy and safety...
This is another bit of lore that I don't think anyone's really covered. One of Sargon's goons, called Tim Pool, even, who knows? But he's one of Sargon's more prominent goons. And I suppose he outranks, he's got a bigger presence, big enough anyway to get on Joe Rogan. And he got an audience with Joe Rogan and a lady that has some sort of involvement in the administration of Twitter, in the running of Twitter. And Tim Pool decided to bring up Sargon, and why was Sargon banned? And then she read out his tweets. She read out what he was doing, his shenanigans. And Tim Pool had to just stop and abandon the line of inquiry because even he was ashamed. I doubt Sargon said sorry. I doubt Sargon's apologized to his friend Tim Pool for making such an arse of him. For publicly shaming and embarrassing his friend to millions of people that were watching the Joe Rogan show at the time, the Joe Rogan Experience at the time. But I think Porsalin, brings up the extract, and it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. Were it not Tim Pool, if V had the audience share and exposure and profile to get on Joe Rogan, V would bring this up. V would be bringing up why was Sargon banned from Twitter, mate? And he would also feel deep shame and embarrassment when confronted with Sargon's words and behaviors from someone who's trying to administer a platform, who's trying to manage a platform that Sargon's fouling with his presence.
Safety lead at Twitter HQ explained exactly what triggered the suspension of Sargon of Akkad's Twitter accounts.
What are the other strikes for Sargon or Carl?
Let's see. There was the use of a Jewish slur.
How do you use it?
To a person, you traitor, Remainer, white genocide supporting Islamophile, Jewish slur lover. That should keep you going. Hashtag Hitler was right.
But these aren't general opinions. These are targeted.
These are targeted at somebody.
That sounds like he's being like he's making a joke.
So the person who just said that sounds like he's making a joke is the capo, is Tim Pool, is the hired Sargonic hand. And okay, yeah, you can walk back from that and say it's a joke. But some other things that this lady quotes, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. It's what we call when Sargon. So Sargon is Aristotle, Plato, the foremost thinker of our times, when he's criticizing feminism and This Week in Stupid. But when he's making remarks like this, it's all just a joke. I'm just a shitlord. I'm just a shitlord extraordinaire. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing wrong.
I understand. In context, it sounds like the other one. In context, what he's saying, particularly the fact that he's a white guy, that doesn't sound like a racial slur at all. He's saying fuck white people, and he is white.
In context, again, these are tied together.
Right.
I always knew that person was not to be trusted. That fucking Jewish slur.
Oh.
So there's a lot. There's a.
Oh, I hope our stream hasn't ended. Hang on. We might have to just...
Again, these are tied together.
Right.
I always knew that person was not to be trusted. That fucking Jewish slur.
Oh.
So there's a lot. There's a.
Our stream has yet again decided to crash. I'll just reload the video. Hang on. Bear with me. If it's a repeat of what it was earlier, we might have to have a part 3 to the stream in order to reload the video. Okay, it's going to be a part 3. Join me in this to be continued stream.